We will reconvene the meeting of the Budget Committee after our recess of yesterday. And the first item, we do have a quorum, and the first item on the agenda is Transportation and Development, presented by Dan Johnson. And I see Deirdre's up there also. So Dan and Deirdre, thank you.
And Mike.
And Mike, yep, thank you. I want to be sure that we keep on track. So you guys are scheduled for about an hour and 15 minutes. And as we've been reminding everybody, about half that time for presentation and half that time for Q&A from the committee. So thank you so much. We're ready to start.
So that
Thank
means
you.
take
And
about an
Cheryl,
hour. That
thank
means
you
take
for
about an
coming
hour,
this
right?
morning. Pardon me?
That means take about an hour for the
Yeah, I don't
presentation.
think so.
We noticed your math problem here.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right in
Yeah,
here.
exactly. Have a good day. We're all good. Hey, first and foremost, good morning, Chair Parks, members of the Budget Committee. I'm Dan Johnson. I'm the Director of the Department of Transportation and Development, and we are pleased to be here with you today to share our budget for fiscal year 1920. Unlike a lot of the other directors, I like to share the wealth. And so I have brought my amazing team with me to kind of share information about their specific programs, lines of business. To my left is Cheryl Bell, our new Assistant Director for Development. To my right is Deidre Landon, our Business Services Manager. And to my far right is Mike Besner, the Assistant Director for Transportation. So we like to break this presentation up because I don't think you want to hear me talk the whole time, as affirmed by the head shake right there by Commissioner Bernard. So with that, we'll dive right in. Before you will see our mission statement. I think it is the only mission statement you will see from any particular department that includes transportation maintenance and dog services. We have a very diverse set of programs within DTD that we all value, appreciate, and enjoy. But you can see before you today, the mission of the department is to provide transportation maintenance and construction, neighborhood enhancement, land use, planning, permitting, and dog services to the residents, property owners, businesses, and traveling public, so they and future generations can experience and invest in a healthy, safe, and livable community. Those words are important to us, the work that we do. Our budget, you can see this gives a brief description of 1718, 1819, 1920. A couple things just kind of draw your attention to starting in 1718. You can see the difference between the 113 and the 61. Obviously, that expenditures component does not contain reserves and contingency. We have a number of our programs that have dedicated funding. They're namely transportation maintenance, building services, SDCs, capital, and others. And with that, you can also see that, for example, for fiscal year 1920, our general fund totals about $5.6 million, 5.7. It's about 4.5% of our total budget. We don't make light of that because a lot of those dollars that come from the general fund do support specific programs, which we'll have some more discussion here in a second about. I do want to highlight the fact that you'll see in 1718 we went from 113, 1819, 133. I want to highlight the fact that a lot of that increase was due to inter-fund transfers associated with closing some funds down. So there's no significant escalation of our cost, then reduction of our costs, our revenues, and or expenditures. It was associated with closing a number of funds, namely SDCs and other funds, and so there are inter-fund transfers illustrated in those numbers. Budget reductions. We have 3 programs that received a 5% reduction to their maintenance level calculations. I want to highlight something for a second. It's a 5% reduction to the maintenance level calculation. So you're going to see these mainly hit planning, code enforcement, and dog services. What's interesting is you'll see positives there. Those are still positives, additional money, but it still illustrates a reduction of those dollars they would have received if it was consistent with our prior maintenance level distributions. Just a couple quick things, and this is going to get into some of the discussion we're going to talk about here in a minute. I'll take dog services, for example. I mean, what the numbers may or may not tell you are the fact that, if you look at a small program like dog services, yeah, it received $20,000 of general fund, which is great. But if you look at the impact of kind of cost allocation, increased personal services cost, The total net reduction of funds to dog services or impact of those costs equate to about $201,000. So there's additional costs that aren't illustrated in all these numbers that we talk about in regards to general fund that have a significant impact on the operations with some of these programs. And there's some of the things that we take into consideration when we do our five-year forecasts for all of our programs, look at the health of those programs. And there, like I said, there are decisions we're going to make this year based on some of those forecasts and some of those issues we're seeing with some of our smaller programs that we have within our department. Savings, thanks to facilities was able to reduce some of the allocated costs. We were able to return, I cannot sit up here like the DA and say I gave back $400,000 because I can't. Those funds that we have that we were able to return were for the ones that weren't dedicated funding. So if it was dedicated funding, we asked for it back. If it wasn't, we willingly provided those funds back to the general fund as a reduction.
So the DA never said he gave the money back. He said he saved it to lower the cost the following year.
Oh.
So you gave it back.
Well, it wasn't that.
Plus.
Don't make a big deal out of it. I don't want to tell you what the number was. It wasn't a lot of money. Next slide, please.
Moving right along.
Moving right along. Additional revenues.
The DA did not listen.
Additional revenues. There was a discussion brought up. Actually, I think Commissioner Lee brought it up in the dialogue about VRF. The timing was awkward regarding the discussion around vehicle registration fee, its implementation and inclusion in this budget. There will be a supplemental budget that has to come forward to acknowledge those revenues that come in. I want to just briefly share what that looks like. And if you haven't been involved in the discussion, haven't been involved in the dialogue we've had with the community, revenue collection will begin in 2020, January of that year. We are estimating about $11 million annually. Keep in mind, by state statute, 60% of that goes to the county, 40% goes to the cities, okay? In addition, the county is going to see approximately $6.7 million. We have remained consistent with our dialogue with the community to invest that in kind of three primary areas. One of which, and these are the dollars that come directly to the county. One being congestion relief or capital projects. We have little to no available funding, especially in our rural areas, to meet capital or congestion issues and or needs. With this amount of money, are we building huge freeways? No. We're talking about left turn lanes on rural roads. We're talking about things that keep people moving safely and efficiently through our system. We also have a focus on traffic safety. We have a traffic safety action plan that has a number of projects that is developed to ensure the citizens of Clackamas County remain safe and healthy on our road systems. And we can never invest enough money in safety. Last but not least, we have been open and honest with the community. We do not have a local road surface treatment. What does that mean? We have no program to go out there and pave the roads that are near and dear to you as you travel home that are by your houses. We do not have the money for that. And what we developed and what we committed to, we received previous revenue from HB 2017. We directed all those revenues consistent with the prior discussion with the community into those arterials, collectors, those higher volume, higher classification roads that get more use. But in regards to local roads that are county maintenance, we don't have a program. Now we do. We're looking to set aside at least $1 million a year to do a local road program. Last but not least, we work collaboratively with our cities. 10% set aside what we call a strategic investment fund, about $1.1 million. We're going to focus that, and we thought it was important when talking with the community to show how jurisdictions can work collaboratively together to do projects. Those dollars will be delegated through our Clackamas County Coordinating Committee, C4. It will be a collaborative process in working with the cities to either go towards road transfers. We have county roads in cities. They'd like to see urbanized. We can't do that because we're not going to urbanize our roads that don't meet our local standards with a transfer of those roads. Or it could be used for some sort of capital construction opportunity if it presents itself. Marijuana revenues. Our esteemed administrator has remained consistent with the discussion he had and the presentation he had with you to remain consistent with the PLP that was issued last year. We are receiving a $13,000 increase from our distribution that we had in previous years. It goes to 3 work groups specifically. You can see up there, code enforcement. It notes a reduction. That was a planned reduction. There were startup costs in the first year with code enforcement about equipment, training, things like that. And those dollars are going to be reallocated, though, to planning and also to traffic safety. There's no change. I believe it's $25,000 for Traffic Safety Department. And then last but not least, we did receive some additional revenues from the Justice Court that go directly, through general fund, that go directly towards our traffic safety work. I'm going to talk just briefly. We've got 6 lines of business in DTD. And essentially, whenever we transition from one line of business to the next, you're going to see our measures that are presented up here. There are a couple up here. We wrestle with what these measures are and how you measure the work that an administrative group will do. But you can see we take a couple things that are very important to us. One of which is, and it's funny that you mentioned it a couple times, Chair Bernard, is the fact employee evaluations. We are adamant about moving that dialogue forward and getting feedback to our employees. We've established this criteria about 2 or 3 years ago, the fact that we've got to do better at that. Additionally, we've added some newer measures at the bottom, some efficiencies, and those are a discussion around the size and scope of your administrative group and the cost of that administrative group as it relates to the totality of our organization. And that measures our size and the services we provide to the group that we have. You know, roughly right now, that runs, like, for example, the FTE count runs about 1.8%. Administrative costs and budget development runs about 1.6%. We're trying to keep that proportionally sized in the right scope. But what do? This is the stuff that we really do. Program development, discussions around, you know, all of us were involved in this discussion around the VRF, local road funding. We work on violence in the workplace programs for our group. We have 300,000 development-related interactions with the development community a year. We want to make sure those interactions take place in a safe environment for our citizens and also for our members of our workforce. Legislative policies, financial monitoring and controls. We run monthly monitoring reports for our group. We distribute those out to every single group that we have so they have an idea about where their dollars are at and where they're going. We do coordination, regional policy coordination. We were just doing it this morning at 7:30 in the morning. We were talking about it with members of our board. But it gives you kind of a scope and scale of kind of the work that we do. For example, also the Title VI work that we're actually prioritizing as we provide services to our citizens. That sounds like a little bit of stuff. We do it for all of that. So you look at, we've got 6 lines of business. Some folks, when you develop their plans, they've really become really specific in their areas, and we've taken kind of a midpoint approach. Some of our programs are pretty large, and some of them are pretty small and specific. They each serve a different purpose. We have 6 lines of business. We have 19 programs. We have 303.39. I still haven't figured out the .39 FTE in DTD. We value them all in the service they provide to the citizens of Clackamas County. You will see the 6 lines of business, admin, livable communities, transportation, our newest member, fleet services, land use and development, and we also work and collaborate and manage and direct the work of special districts, which are not included in this budget, but they include urban renewal and the lighting district. That's the total scope of services that we provide. With that, I'm going to stop talking for a while, and I'm going to turn it over to Cheryl and Mike to kind of roll through a dialogue on livable communities.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm going to start off with livable communities. As Dan noted, Mike and I share this line of business. From the sustainability and solid waste part of this program and code enforcement, I'd like to highlight 2 of our MFR measures that are before you. For sustainability, it's that top measure, and tracks a number of businesses initiating a food scrap collection program. This is something we've been tracking for a while, but it has renewed importance because of a new metro ordinance that requires the local government to ensure that food-related businesses help food businesses collect food scraps and have a recycling program. Now we're doing draft code for this now, and if it is successfully implemented, it'll start in March of 2020. So that's what is reflected in this measure. You see for fiscal year 1920, our target is 40 businesses joining the program, and that's up from the 25 from fiscal year 1819. For code enforcement, I wanted to highlight the 3rd measure down, and it shows the number of days between receiving a complaint from the public and validating that the violation is an active violation that needs to be enforced. The target is 17 days, and this includes a 10-day waiting period where we do a notification to the person that the violation is being placed against. And then 7 days for staff to follow up. And in the 7 days, staff need to do a field inspection and coordinate with that person to get on the property and maybe pull in some experts like land use staff or building codes. Currently, we're at 23 days. We're close, but we're not quite there. But we've been hiring staff, and we're actively working on improving the responsiveness on this measure. Then I'm going to pass it back to Mike to discuss dog services.
Dog services. So the thing I wanted to highlight today was the last measure there, which is the number of dogs returned to their owners. That's our biggest measure of success in our dog shelters, making sure that dogs find their way back home. It's amazing how many stray dogs you get in a year. And so the measure there for 1920, the target is 500. We're generally between 500 and 600 dogs returned to their owners. It's about 75% of all the stray dogs that come to the shelter get returned to their owners, and we're very proud of that number. So it's the best outcome for a dog is to go back home.
It's back to me. Doing the ping pong for you. For livable communities, we have a number of items we're looking at as we do a look ahead. For sustainability and solid waste, as I mentioned, we have the Metro Food Scrap Collection Program that's coming online. And key in this is we see this as an education-first program. We're going to be partnering with businesses to help them understand the value of collecting food scraps, help them make it viable in their business, and really see the economic advantage of doing this. In this, we've received funding from Metro, and that funds 1 FTE as part of this program. The next big thing for sustainability is a climate action plan. Recently, the Board of County Commissioners voiced their support for updating our climate action plan. And while sustainability is leading this effort, this is a countywide initiative, and there is a multidisciplinary, multi-divisional work group that's making the scope of work that will eventually go to the consultant to construct the new sustainability action plan, with the end goal being a plan that has options and choices for the board to consider that makes actionable steps on climate change. I also want to touch on, it's not on our slide, but briefly for dump stoppers, I know BCS yesterday did a great presentation and noted their involvement in dump stoppers and the federal funds that go towards that. The Solid Waste Fund does contribute $75,000 a year to that. That has been in the past and is ongoing in the budget before you today. From code enforcement, last year, as Dan mentioned, we were part of the policy level proposal for the restricted marijuana dollars. We used that money to hire 1 FTE, and as Dan noted, there were startup costs involved with training staff and getting equipment related to marijuana enforcement. The need on this is real. Since 2016, when marijuana came online, we've enforced 99 code enforcement cases, and the work from the marijuana dollars in this dedicated position has really helped us enforce and mitigate these cases. The other program to highlight is Neighborhood Livabilities Project. This is for our most difficult properties, and it uses a 360 approach of code enforcement staff partnered with law enforcement and social services. These are for our most difficult properties, and they have a very strong ripple effect in the community, so we're really excited that the work that has been done on this program to date, as of May 1, closed 135 cases, and they actively are pursuing 24 more. I'll pass it back to Mike for the road ahead on dog services.
This is our only line of business that's this way. So back to dogs. So dog services, other than general fund, our biggest revenue source is our licensing, is our dog licensing. And so we're having a renewed focus on it. And we've come up with new forms. We're relooking at it. Compliance nationwide with dog licensing is poor. It's difficult to get it going, but we're going to be doing more outreach and being a little bit more aggressive in making sure that the ones we know about, the dogs get licensed. The income is important to the program. We're also engaging our vets more to help have this happen. We have options at vets. They can sell dog licenses on our behalf. We're giving them a slightly larger, we've lost a few of them in recent years, so we're trying to get them back, making it easier for them, making it easier for them also to report back to us when they've done rabies vaccinations, which is the law. They must do that, and that triggers the request for a dog license that we will then mail out to the dog owner. We are proposing leaving 2 positions vacant, and it's an officer, an enforcement officer, and also an animal health technician, and the reason is because of all the budget issues and knowing that the general fund It's going to have some things to work out in the next year. We're trying to see what happens over the next year rather than rush into it. So we're holding those back right now to see financially if in the future we can keep them. All right, transportation. So I'll hit a couple highlights here. One of our measures here shows the number of projects that we manage. And you can see it's been between 17-18, 18-19, and 19-20, it's going up. We are getting busier and busier, and that's a good thing. It's partially because of House Bill 2017, which I'll get to in a minute. We're also know we'll be gearing up a little bit to deliver more projects with the vehicle registration fee. But in general, we're just busy. And we have a staff that's all they do is manage those projects and deliver them for us. One of the big things we manage also is road paving, which is the next line there. These are split into fiscal years, which is insanely awkward considering July 1st is around the time the pavers are already there. And so let me just go calendar years for you for a second. In 2018, we paved just over 18 miles. This is calendar year. 2019, we're going to be doing about 12 and a half miles, and then an additional 3 just within the city of Damascus, which is actually a different measure we have because that money is still kept separate.
It's not a city.
The
Damascus
once
area.
and future city of, and maybe present city of Damascus,
Status unknown.
status unknown.
The area of Damascus.
And 2020, so next calendar year, we're planning on paving 23 miles. So the number is going up as we said it would as the House Bill 2017 money continues to come in. All right, so what's going on? Dan already mentioned the local vehicle registration fee, and he mentioned what those are going to, so I won't repeat that. House Bill 2017, just so you know, that was the measure that the state legislature passed, I think coincidentally in 2017. And we've reported to the board exactly what we're going to be doing with that money. It's increases over about a 10-year period, so it ramps up. The big thing is eventually we'll be doing $8.5 million worth of paving projects a year by 2026-27, which is around when the measure fully gets implemented. We're also doing safety projects with that money. We're having to do ADA ramps, so Americans with Disabilities Act curb ramp improvements. It's the law. Anytime we touch a road now, we have to also upgrade the curb ramps to make sure they meet the requirements. And we're also hiring, part of that money also goes into some staff, just road workers, so they can continue doing the good road work that they do while we prepare roads for the paving projects. Transportation maintenance facility, want to be clear, no local vehicle registration money is going into any costs associated with relocating transportation maintenance, but we do have plans underway to relocate them to a different facility. It's in the very early stages. Also want to talk about how we're using land sale proceeds, both from the Chow site and the actual site maintenance currently is on, to help pay down the balance of that project to minimize the eventual bond payment as much as possible. And if you don't know, our current transportation maintenance facility is in a floodplain. In 1996 was under, what, 13 feet of water?
Over my head.
Not so good when our first responders need to help themselves rather than help the people that we want them to be helping. Asset management, we're still working on getting that program implemented. We're close to putting out a request to hire an asset manager. We've done a strategic plan for asset management so that we can better manage the 1,400 miles of roads, 80 traffic signals, thousands of signs, thousands of miles of striping, 180 bridges that we own, and making sure we're spending this increase in funding wisely. And that'll include our transportation maintenance technicians who run our pavement management system as well. Deidre, you want to touch on this budget category modification?
So within the transportation line of business, we've housed our system development charge funds, and we have 2 dedicated pots of money. We have one that's from collections on countywide development, and then we have some money from the Happy Valley Joint District that's left over that we still intend to spend in that area.
We were able to identify a partnership with Clackamas County Development Agency this year, where one of the projects that they were working on actually was eligible to use the system development charge funding. And so what we did is we programmed it in our budget as an interfund transfer, because historically, usually it's a DTD capital project, and so that's how we've always reflected it in our budget. Because we are going to be, I guess, sending that money over to a special district instead of one of our countywide funds, it needs to be reflected as a special payment category instead of an interfund transfer. And so the budget documents that you were presented with do still show that as an interfund, but we'll be making that modification to the budget document before it gets adopted to make sure it's shown as a special payment. So we're able to contribute about $1.5 million toward the I-205 Sunnyside overpass from payments that we've received from developers because that was an eligible project. So we're really excited about that partnership.
1.5 of a $26 million project, so, for the development agency.
Can I make a comment? So this actually is an amendment we would like you guys to approve when you approve the budget through your process of transferring it from the category of transfers to special payments. Just to clarify, and I really appreciate you making that note.
Thank you.
Will there be a note provided for the motion that? would
We are
state
going to
that?
make a list of any amendments you have, and then we'll be able to list them so that you can say the budget, we approve the budget
With,
as amended with these amendments.
Thank
and
you.
We will include that amendment.
All right, fleet services. I'm actually not going to go over any of these measures, but I have a good reason.
okay,
So as Dan mentioned, we just inherited this program.
Pleased to have this program. Yeah, no,
It's good to inherit.
okay.
Usually. I meant it in a good way. We're proud to bring fleet services into the
excited.
DTD family. There you go. However, having said that, these are measures by a former fleet manager who's been gone for a little while. The current employees don't have a lot of attachment to these. They don't have a lot of meaning. They're here because they exist. What we can tell you is by December, we're going to be doing a new MFR process, new performance Clackamas process for fleet, and we will probably be, I couldn't tell you these won't reappear, but we're going to be starting from scratch. And we're going to work with the fleet employees to help come up with measures that are meaningful. So, why is fleet in DTD? Well, there was a program audit done of both light and heavy fleet. Heavy was already in Department of Transportation and Development. Light was actually in finance. And as a result of the audit, a conclusion was, hey, let's combine these. And we had an arm wrestling match with Krista. Won't say who won, but no, we're happy to have it. So they're consolidated in Department of Transportation and Development. It started on January 12th. The budgets will be combined starting on July 1st, assuming this budget is approved. Part of what we're doing is a market analysis. We're relooking at all the shop and motor pool rental rates, trying to figure out how do they work, what went into them. We have been communicating with departments throughout the county, a lot of communication with the sheriff's office, who's one of the biggest customers of the light fleet shop. There's also a permanent rental program. We're looking at the existing agreements, and we're going to restructure that program probably moving forward because we're having a difficult time piecing together how it was intended to work. And so that's where we're at with fleet.
Well, I get the pleasure of presenting land use and development. And this is a pretty wide-ranging line of business. It includes current and long-range planning, the building codes team, development engineering, the public land corners program, and the Office of the County Surveyor. So that is a lot of teams working together, but at its core and its function, this is a customer service program where staff's expertise, knowledge, and partnership with the client directly impacts two performance Clackamas measures of ensuring safe, healthy, and secure communities and growing a vibrant economy. So at the departmental level, as you can imagine with a program this size, we track a lot of MFR measures, many, only a few are shown here, and I'm gonna highlight the top 4. For fiscal year 18-19, we anticipate providing, as Dan mentioned, 300,000 customer interactions with our customers and community. And we have a 95% success rate in doing this. Our customers enjoy working with us, and we enjoy working with our customers. This directly results in 6 million square feet constructed at a value of 400 million in constructed improvements. So why is this important? This is directly impacting creating a safe and vibrant built environment for Clackamas County and economic development. These are the homes that house our residents, and these are the commercial buildings that provide jobs and economic development for the community. As we look ahead, thanks. As we look ahead, nudge, nudge, we have a number of areas of focus, but I'm going to talk about just a few of these. As Mike mentioned about the FTE count, for land use and permitting, we are also being mindful of our FTE count. We have 76.65 positions, 0.6 budgeted, and we are filling 74.65. So we were conscious on holding these vacancies, and we're going to be monitoring our 5-year projections before hiring. As I noted, this is a customer service focused line of business. We see staff as our strategic advantage, and we want to be mindful in bringing more staff into the program.
Can I get clarification? Or am I reading that wrong? You have 76.65 budgeted and 74 positions to be filled?
No, that are filled. We're holding 2 vacant.
But it says to be filled, doesn't it? Does it not?
It does.
Yes. Yeah, just meaning that our intent, because typically if we're going to budget 76.65, our intent is that all of those would be filled. And I see what you're saying. It seems like we've got 74.65 vacant.
Unfilled positions.
Yeah, no.
No. I don't know that I could handle hiring 74.65.
That would have solved your budget problem.
Yeah, exactly.
That solves our budget problem. Thank you, DTD.
You're welcome.
No more permits.
Well, another area that we're recalibrating based off of budget is our electronic plan review. We have looked at the funding and the available money from the general fund allocation to some of our programs. We decided to scale this program back, and we are still very committed to electronic plan review. We feel that it provides critical integration of services, and in a county of our size, it is important to provide this access to our citizens and our customers. We are going to be retooling the program. We're still looking at options, but the one that we are exploring and seems most viable is having building codes division go first, and then we can capitalize on the lessons learned and leverage those as we bring other programs on into electronic plan review. The other area I wanted to touch on is the long-range planning work program. This program has had increasingly more awareness from the community, the Board of County Commissioners, and the Planning Commission. The Board of County Commissioners just approved our 2-year work program, and in that, they had significant structural changes. We've moved from a 1-year program to a 2-year program to recognize the complexity of the issues that we are discussing in that program, the time needed for public engagement, for researching solutions, and then implementing the final solution. We are also lumping projects together in comprehensive plan chapters, so we can look at one chapter as opposed to going in, doing a small project, going out and do something else, going back to the same chapter. We're going to be looking at one chapter so we can use economics of scale to really look at a solution and be mindful of our resources. And in that, we're going to be using issue papers. The issue paper allows us to delve into an issue before executing the solution, look at options, come back to decision makers, have discussion, stage our public engagement, and research the solutions before we use staff time to implement the final decision. So with this, I'm going to hand it back to Dan, who's going to present our departmental emerging issues.
I am, but before I do, I want to just make something really, really clear. We are making the conscious decision to not fill those employees. That may change, and it's going to change in discussions that happen regarding the zero-based budgeting exercise that we're going to go through countywide. A better understanding about what the general fund distributions are going to be in the future. Because our single biggest investment we have are the employees that we have and the relationship we build with them and the service they provide. I never want to look somebody in the eye and hire them on day 1 and then in 60 days have a discussion with them about having to let them go. It impacts our organization and impacts the employee. But I will tell you right now, they are needed. The 2 positions that we are choosing not to fill in dog services provide value services. Those 2 positions right there, if I had my way, I would fill those and I would roll those to the long-range work program. They are needed, but it's a discussion around the fiscal responsibility we have, dollars, cents, making the difficult decisions. With that, here are other fun things. We we are always keeping track of economic indicators. We go through on almost a quarterly basis and kind of have discussions and dialogues around permit volumes, lot development through our surveyor's office. We track the number of lots that are being developed. That then creates the number of houses that might get built. We look for indicators in that market. We were tracking one. The thought was Q2 of 2020. They're still talking about a downshift to some extent. We're aware of that. We kind of programmed some of that in. Population, having said that, we continue to grow. People are moving into the area. You all know this. You all feel it on a day-to-day basis. We have a lot of pressure on development, redevelopment, infill, development services, capacity needs for transportation systems, the services we want to provide. We're pleased to say that we have the VRF now that allows us a local source that we can prioritize associated with our values to meet some of those needs. We all forecasting. Like I said, we do monthly monitoring. We do 5-year forecasting. We project these trends. That is why we're making the decisions we're making right now to hold. I don't want to say not, but hold filling some of those positions. Cost recovery. I heard you folks talking about that the last discussion. I would just be so enthralled in the discussion around cost recovery and some policy dialogue regarding that. Is it process or is it programmatic cost recovery? I mean, things like that. What are you looking for? It's been a dialogue that's been going on, in all honesty, for decades, about 80%, 70%, 60%. Some cost recovery dialogues are clearer than others. So, for example, our planning department, our interactions to permits, we have about 33 interactions with people that result in one permit. And so that you have discussion around public service. What is that amount of cost recovery versus general fund support you want to provide in programs such as that? Local vehicle registration fee. We are actively moving forward in a community discussion around establishing an advisory group. How do we get that program up, remain consistent with the discussion we have with the community, get their feedback on the projects that we are looking to do? That is underway. In fact, the application timeline closed about a week ago, and we're reviewing that list right now. Transportation maintenance relocation makes me sweat because the dialogue is around bond rates, interest rates, all those things that you hear. You know, a quarter-point increase results in a $250,000 debt service payment, and that makes your heart kind of stop. But it's a discussion that we need to start moving forward. Money does not get any cheaper in the foreseeable future, but it's a discussion that we're having. So with that, we are early. And I would be glad to answer any questions that you might have. I know for a fact there's one that I've already got hit with, but we'll wait to hear what that is.
So, we have several from members up here. I would like to ask a quick question first. The 2 positions you're not filling in dog control, did you say one of them is an animal control officer?
Yes.
So do you have other animal control officers so that we're not losing our only one?
No, we have 2 animal control officers and 1 licensing officer right now.
Okay.
So what we're not doing is backfilling. We had one that left, and we're not backfilling that position.
I see.
So it will reduce in a reduction in response. We don't do
Exactly.
emergency response now anyway, and it's not a 24/7 operation, but
Right.
people might wait a little bit longer depending on the workload.
Okay. But there is somebody still there. I was concerned about that. So, thank you. Thank you. We have Commissioners Humberston and then Savas and Bernard, then Feely, and is that Martha's that's up also? I can't see them. Okay, thank you.
Before I start asking questions, I want to thank your team for the assistance they've given me and constituents with constituent complaints. We've had a number of conversations that had to do with dog services, that have had to do with the planning department and the neighborhood leader program, and in all cases, staff were very helpful, and you guys were very helpful, and I really want to tell you that I appreciate that.
Appreciate those comments.
Individual constituent services are important to me, and I appreciate the effort you put in. I also want to say thank you for the data that you provided for the vehicle registration fee conversation, because in talking to a great many community groups, that data made all the difference. Most people think of roads as how it feels on your butt, as you once said, and there's a lot more to it than just how it feels on your butt. So thank you for that. That said, I do have some questions. Starting on page 19.
I'm going to roll back here while you're talking because there's some that went. to get to your question.
19 of that, or 19
Page 19 of,
in our budget book.
in the budget book, yeah. So at the top of your beginning balance of $6,611,959 was transferred. You've explained why it was transferred, but not where it was transferred. So I would appreciate knowing where it went, because I couldn't figure out where it went.
And Deidre is going to answer that question, but before I do so, it's a great question, and it's a great question to the differences between some of the programs that we have. We have programs that are large. So for example, if you look at the top right, land use and development review and permitting, that's 75 FTE that are there providing that service. On the flip side, you look at Damascus Roads, there are 0 FTE in that. And the reason is we want to make sure we're providing transparency and we can honor a discussion and a dialogue and show exactly where those dollars are being directed. So at any given time, we can pull that program up, run the numbers on that program in regards to the revenue side and the expenditure side. And so with that, I'm going to let Deidre have a discussion around that $6 million.
So when we first developed our Managing for Results plan, we included our two, you can see at the very bottom there, the countywide TSDCs and the Happy Valley Subarea TSDCs were both included in the top program under transportation, which is Transportation Engineering and Construction. What we did that particular year, where you see that $6 million that came in and then it's gone, we closed the Happy Valley Joint Subarea SDCs fund. It used to be Fund 227 in our budget. We also closed Fund 416, which was our Transportation Capital Projects budget. All of those had lived in Program 7432 previously, and so we had to transfer them out of that 7432 program. But you can look at pages, sorry, I pulled one of them out. You can look at page number 26, and you'll see the figures for the transportation, the countywide transportation system development charges. And then on page, it should probably be 27, you would see the Happy Valley Joint Sub-Area funds. And so we just ended up having to do an inter-fund transfer to get it to the right program so we could close those funds.
Okay. Thank you.
And that provides us a more transparent description and discussion around the use of those dollars.
Next, on page 21, I noticed your revenues, in federal revenues, local government and other agency, charge for service, and other financing sources all took pretty major hits. Curious as to what happened there.
So
Page was that, Ken?
Page 21.
Thank you.
I don't know if, so the federal revenue and local, a lot of that is small grant money. And so that's going to vary from year to year, depending on what we're doing.
So you're just assuming that there'll be less grant money?
Well,
In your
yeah,
income
so when
assumption.
it comes to, yeah,
Is it this line? That's Secure Rural Schools.
oh, the federal, okay, I apologize, that's right, this is maintenance. Thank you. The federal money is the Secure Rural Schools reduction, so what we call the timber money. And so it's been going down every year, and although there is a renewed attempt right now by our senators to get it back to, roughly that $800,000 number again, it's now pretty much down to actual timber cutting receipts, unless a new law is passed. So that is, and recall, a few years ago, that was almost $5 million a year, not to mention the amount that county general fund got on top of that.
And then, well, there's some others in that same column that show significant reductions. I was just curious as to.
Would you like me to jump in with you?
Sure, go ahead.
So with the state revenue line there, that does include our motor vehicle fund, but it includes what is left of our motor vehicle fund after that fund provides support for the other transportation programs in our budget. So we start with our full anticipated amount of motor vehicle fund, which I believe was about, you know what, actually, hold on. I can tell you. It was about 32 million, I believe, is what we programmed in for motor vehicle fund as a whole, and that's with some of the increases from the House Bill 2017 plus receipts we were receiving before. But what we have to do is balance all of those programs under the transportation line of business there. And you have traffic safety, you have transportation, construction, and engineering, which is where our capital projects live. And so some of our motor vehicle fund provides support in those programs as well, and you'll see it programmed there. So what happened this year is that we ended up increasing some of our investments on safety, and then also we could have had some increased need for match dollars on some capital projects, because you saw that our capital projects, number of projects we're managing, has gone up quite a bit. And so you have to really look at the totality of road fund there to see how much road fund there is. So it's not that we're really anticipating a huge drop, it's that the programmatic shift influenced that particular line in this program.
So
In fact, you'd see an increase in another location on your budget, if I'm understanding you
I
correctly.
also want to point out, under charges for services, some of that is money that now will be in the fleet budget that used to be in DTD. So
Okay.
it's another example of that. The federal revenues also included a couple emergency projects that got completed, so we're not doing them anymore, so the money's not coming in anymore.
Okay.
So a good example, sorry.
Oh, I'm just saying, it's difficult to, when you see those kind of drops, it's just difficult to figure out what's, there's not an explanation as to exactly why they dropped.
let's make this simple. You see that transportation line of business right there on this screen in front of you?
Yep.
What happens is essentially we have to go through there. Some are dedicated, specifically dedicated funds like SDCs and Damascus Roads. If it doesn't, and Happy Valley Joint Sub Area, if it resides outside of those are areas that other areas we're using our state revenue. What happens is that whatever is left, we put all into maintenance. So there may be an increase in construction, there may be an increase in traffic safety, the remainder gets balanced out in transportation maintenance. So the increases are,
And at a line of business level, just so you know, that state revenues, it went from 31.6 million in our year-end estimate for our current year up to 34 million for next year. And so we do break it out. It's hard for us as well to have things rolled up into these categories, so we have to look at it a number of different ways. But for example, traffic safety went from like 1.5 million this current year in road fund, this is just pure road fund support, up to about 3.7 million next year. And you've got, there's $100,000 increases in some various programs. You've got 1.6 million goes into the land use development review and permitting, and it went up to 1.8. So it's really kind of throughout the list. I'd be happy to share this list with you so you kind of see the full support for the road fund.
Maybe after we do this, I should sit down with you and go over it in a little more detail. That would be helpful.
We'd be happy to. Yeah.
I'll try to move on here because I'm sure other people have questions. On page 26, you had a 400.5% increase in cost allocation charges. I realize we do cost allocation, but that's a huge increase.
Cost allocation.
Page 26, yeah.
Let me pull that up.
Yeah, what's going on here, Gary?
For Gary's Tesla.
That's Dawn's thing
It's
was
not
the
nearly
Tesla. Mine is an X-wing fighter. X-wing fighter. I'm sorry. What on page 26?
6 is
Allocated
a point.
6 allocated costs.
I
Cost
see the
allocation
line.
charges.
Yeah, and it's a discussion around it went from $4,000 to $20,000.
We
Big jump.
actually, we saw a large jump in records management because we've been sending some of our files over there to have them stored. And before we were storing them over in engineering, and we've been trying to do a really good job going through and cleaning that up and getting it stored at the right place so we can follow retention schedules as
So is
needed.
that in effect a change from one department to another department?
No, it's an allocated cost because we're using a service.
Because we're using their storage space over in records management.
Which is why we built all that stuff.
Right. So we've been trying to be more diligent about sending our stuff to be stored in the proper location.
Would it be cheaper to
Yeah.
make it all electronic?
That's what we did.
And that's exactly.
Is electronic?
We are scanning them, but you have a certain period under the retention schedule that you have to keep the hard copies.
Keep the hard
At
copies.
which point they're now tracking that for us, and we'll be able to tell them to destroy them when the time is right.
Trust me, it is a better service provided than simply storing it and the cost of the space it's being stored in. So,
So if I may quickly, so yes, and this was in my budget message, allocated cost in general went up countywide. Departments, they determine how they want to allocate it within their various programs. That's entirely their choice.
Just, I realize in your budget message, you did say that they would go up, but 400% was a big jump, and
It was.
so, I think I'll just let it go there. Thank you.
Very much. Commissioner Savas?
Hello. I just want to kind of echo Commissioner Humberson's compliments to all the work you guys done, and I've known all of you, especially the three to our left, for a very, very long time. And so, with respect, I want to raise something here, which I've raised before. I'll raise it again. And it's always been uncomfortable for me. So we know that, and we've messaged for a very long time that every day that goes by, we don't fix a road, and that bed is undermined, that the cost of that goes up exponentially. I think 10 times or 13 times the number has been thrown out, okay? So we know that investing in certain roads as soon as possible is a critical factor, right? We also know that every day that goes by, construction costs are going up. So I look at the carryovers, and I really appreciate the fact that you've broken this out, so that I'm going to take this as a breakout.
What page on?
I'm getting there. So you can pick which one you want, but I look at, you've got between transportation SDCs, not joint, but the transport on page 26, I believe. And on page 19 and 20, 21, you also have under the maintenance, you have maintenance dollars, but under 19, that's broken out into transportation engineering, and maybe let's just say we'll focus on page 21. You know, you guys have been averaging a carryover, y'all, been averaging a carryover significant, which has been bothersome for me. Those dollars on the two premises I just laid out, number one, you know, the cost of construction going up, and the other one being that, you know, every day we wait on a road, you know, that cost would be, those dollars are losing value. That carryover is losing value. And we say we're going to bring out a package, and construction and so on. But, you know, the package by now ought to be somewhat reflective of really on page 21 of that carryover, right? So those dollars are losing value. It seems like we're banking them. And I'm sorry if it's coming off wrong, but I mean.
well, I'm going to respond, but hang on.
Okay. But all that total carryover is $35 million between those three pages that I'm talking about. And again, some of that's capital, but at least on page 21, it's maintenance.
Yep.
So please explain why we're banking. It seems to me that we're banking a lot of money, and we ought to be putting that money down in pavement or road treatments.
Let me start with the SDC's point, because you brought up the SDC funds. The SDC are restricted funding that have to be partnered against other local money. I don't have other local money on capital projects that we can partner with. It's an opportunity that we use those dollars. We're trying to leverage those dollars as efficiently and effectively as we can. Like you saw up there, we're doing the $1.5 million transfer for the development agency project. And we're going to have other monies available, because it's a countywide, for example, the SDC program. We're also going to have other opportunities in our rural areas, hopefully, to be able to leverage that money against the VRF money to provide capital construction costs, because those SDC dollars can only be used for congestion relief. I'm just saying that, you know that, but I'm just saying it for the good of the order for everybody who's here. I wholeheartedly agree with the discussion around the other work. And here's the nuance that we find ourselves in. Last year, we talked to all of you about the fact that HB 2017 money was coming in. And we said it was going to take us a while to kind of get ramped up for that to get those dollars on the streets. It's the same discussion that we're going to have about the hiring freeze. I can't develop and it's a good discussion to have, and that's why there's an exception process built into it. I've got to figure out how to get people lined up to get those projects on the ground. And we're doing that right now. We've got our paving package went out. It's going out to bid. We've told them, you know what? The next day that paving package goes in, you better be starting on the paving package for next year. You need to be starting on the paving package for next year, because we need to get it to hit the marketplace sooner. Also, there's the market. I'll bring up a project that's near and dear to probably a number of you, Carver Bridge.
Yeah.
We bid Carver Bridge a number of times.
Capital or maintenance? But let's just separate the two, because I want to get back to page
That was-
21 and the carryover.
Okay, well, that was capital, but it's also the discussion around the dialogue around a maintenance project as well. It's lack of bidders. So we're having dialogues around how we be more proactive in that. How do we package larger projects together that are in close proximity to get a higher paving package out to the marketplace to get it bid on? And those are all things that we're dealing with. So the discussion that you're having right now about the carryover, I don't know, what page were you on, 22? Mike, did you look at it?
Page 21.
Are you talking about the beginning fund balance?
Well, I'm just going to say whether it was Barb Cartmill or it was Cam Gilmore.
Oh.
Deidre members might be bringing this up and bringing it up often, and I hear the same thing, right? But we still have the carryover, and those are roads that aren't being fixed. Gosh, I mean, that's a lot of money. It's been in the millions. I went back to 2009, okay? You guys have been carrying a heck
Well,
of a carryover.
Hang on, some
for
of
a
it's
very
land sale
long
proceeds.
time.
Some of it's land sale proceeds that we are intentionally holding for a discussion about the transportation maintenance relocation.
On road maintenance?
It's
They're
in that
held in that
program.
fund.
Well, how much of that?
5.25 million.
Okay, so subtract that with an average of about, a 15 to 20 million average carryover of money not being spent. That's losing value. Okay, that money
inflation.
has lost a tremendous amount. It's probably worth half as much, maybe a third of what it was
Half
from
as much?
2009. What would $5 million do in 2009?
I have no
What does
idea.
$5 million do today? My point is, it's losing value.
And I don't disagree with that because of inflation.
Well,
There's an
because
inflationary
inflation,
impact to that.
the roads that are,
Correct.
the road beds that are
Correct.
theoretically that are falling apart, that we could have paved a long time ago and saved them
And
at
so,
a fraction
hang
of
on,
the
I
cost.
can't answer the question for prior directors. I can't do that. But the discussion I can tell you that I'm having with Mike is how, because when I took the job, the interview questions that I was faced with, I said that what are the things that keep me up at night? And one of the biggest things that I said was the fact that we've got new money coming in and our citizens have got to see that money. They got to see that money on the ground. That's the discussion that we're having right now and continue to have about how we get more proactive in that. The dialogue also is around the fact that we told you there was more money coming in and we had to gear up for that. And we've been doing that a little bit. We haven't been doing it well enough. In fact, we just talked this morning about the discussion on that slide that you saw for average miles paved and on our performance measure. That is a difficult slide or a difficult measure to determine, but we need to get better at it. And we need to be more proactive about getting those projects out on the pavement. Looking at the discussion we've had to date is we've committed to an $8.5 million annual paving package. We've committed that to the Board of County Commissioners. We have a strategic plan about how to provide that. It includes hiring some additional FTE, because you got to have people who can manage some of those projects. By managing those projects means getting them out to the marketplace. We're talking about consulting services. We have to get consulting services on because those projects, 3-4 years ago, we could go grind a road and pave a road, and we're done. I can't go out there and touch a road right now without fixing all the ADA components associated with it. And those are those little idiosyncrasies that complicate the discussion and the dialogue. Sunnyside Railroad's a great example. I can't go touch Sunnyside Road and pave Sunnyside Road without fixing every ADA ramp associated with it. So you took a 1-year paving project and made it 2 years. And that doesn't explain all of it, but I'm just sharing some of those items that are complexity associated with it.
Sorry, what I can tell you, and I mentioned it before, is our 2020 contract paving it's almost double what our 2019.
Which is how much?
23 miles.
No, dollars.
1920, we have $10 million programmed for contracted maintenance, which is those paving
I
packages.
guess what I'm arguing is it could have been double that.
Well,
right?
we also
Because we're sitting on that money.
Well, hang on.
That's my point.
We also programmed $6 million in our year-end estimate for this year. And so historically, we'd been doing about an average of maybe $3 million a year of contract paving. We also saw what you saw, that we have this money in our ending fund balance. We know what our needs are for a relocation, and we program all that out in our 5-year forecast. And we identified as well that we could increase some of our paving packages. And so that's what you'll see. In our 18-19, we have the $6 million, which we went from an average of about 3 and bumped it up to 6. And then while programming for 19-20, we said, why don't we even make that a little bit higher? You will see it drop down. That said, next year, it's not going to be a $10 million package because we're now spending that ending fund balance to do that as well as moving forward with the relocation. So you're going to see this.
And when you spend those dollars down, I mean, discussion we're having right now with our pavement folks is the dialogue. We can't sustain at our current funding rates that $10 million cost for a paving package. It's gonna flex, and so you're gonna see in upcoming years when we spend down the land sale proceeds, have discussion about the relocation. It's gonna flex back down to what would be our reasonable amount, because the dialogue we've had is how do we trend up to that 8.5 million sustained. And so we're spending down the dollars we can right now to get them out on the road, and then we'll have a discussion around how we programmatically provide that service.
Excuse me, Haley Fish has a comment to make that's relevant to the conversation. Thank you, Haley.
Yes, so if you look at page 21, I would say that they are intentionally making an effort to do what you're saying by looking at the operating expenditures. They've increased those by 5.5 million, and they've decreased their contingency by 5.7. So they have programmed the funds. Where you saw the 20 million is that the difference between the amended budget and the projected year end. There's about a $10 million that they had hoped to do but hadn't. So maybe that goes back to your capacity or your ramping up of your program. But if you look, they have programmed to spend most of that money. They're only programming to carry over about 4.6 million.
I guess
So
I-
if they actually spent the budget they're proposing, they'd only have a 4.6
Right,
million
I'm
dollar
not looking at the
carryover.
budget number, I'm actually looking at the beginning balance, which is the carryover. And so I get your point, I understand
So
your point, and I think Deidre understands my point, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for Deidre's math skills. She's impressed me for years and years and years. But it would be a frightening number to actually calculate out the value of those dollars back in 2009 and see how they actually diminished, looking at the cost of construction and also looking at perhaps hard to calculate, but the degrading of the roads to the point to where maybe some of the roads have failed in the last 10 years. But when we average that much carryover, we're not utilizing those dollars to the best advantage, and we're losing ground every day in the value of that dollar.
As illustrated by the budget that you see before you today, which spends those dollars down.
You would impress me if you come back next year with a fraction, half.
You
of
will
the
have a
carry-
fraction.
carryover.
Because you look at the five, I mean, what we're looking at right now, there's one thing to look at the current vision, there's the 5 and 10 year forecasts. And it's programmatically, how do you find the sweet spot between debt service dialogue, operation, and components of service delivery?
And the last thing I want to just bring your attention to, everyone's attention to, is the second to last page under tab 9. I lost the number. Page 48, and the graph to the left, the red line and the blue line.
What page was that again?
Page 48.
Thank you.
Tab 9, page 48. The bar graph showing the where it ends, where it terminates, where the red line and the blue line terminates. You're showing a spread of $20 million. Any response to that?
My response would be that's your capital that you're spending. If you can even look at the capital line, you're talking about wanting to spend it down.
Yeah.
That's where you see that
That's-
increase in expense.
You're seeing the increase in expenditure.
Okay, so I want to make sure.
But that gets to exactly the point that you're bringing up, is why you having these reserves sitting here, get them out on the street, which is what we're programmed through our budgets to do.
Okay,
Ma-
we'll talk
You're
about
always impressed by us. Come on, you always.
I know, you guys are good. We're all good. And next year, that carryover, like I said, is significantly less. That beginning balance is significantly less, and you spend it on pavement.
In the
But the
transportation
package ought to be
maintenance.
numerically a lot higher than what you're claiming is going to be for this year. That concerns me.
It will be less. The dialogue is, how do we continue to make it less? And how do we become more proactive in our discussion around these paving packages so we can deliver more and get those dollars on the street? And that is a discussion that is happening now.
Thank you, Commissioner Bernard. And then Mr. Feely, then Commissioner Schrader.
So I don't totally agree with the idea of spending down everything when the costs are the highest. You know, one thing that you'll find that, right now it's going to be hard to find a contractor. You mentioned it already. When the state money, the VRF money all comes in, everyone's going to be busy. So the costs are higher. There are, during a downturn, you have an opportunity to maybe get more for the money. So the money could be more valuable next year than it is this year. And we know there's a downturn coming. we don't obviously want to save a ton of money. Right now, with the VRF and the HP 2017, we need to show that we're doing something with it. But in the future, it may be a good idea to have money set aside, especially if we can't get a bidder, set aside for when there is less business. However, I don't see that happening. I mean, if T2020, something happens with that, which is the bond measure that Metro's looking at, that'll even increase the cost per mile because there'll be so many people out there working. We actually need to work on the workforce, increasing the people in the workforce. And anyway, so on my stuff, climate action plan, I'd like to see something about solar. Clackamas County working to increase the use of solar, not only on our buildings, but if I look out at my office window, I see all these big roofs that have no solar on them. It just seems so wasteful. I was in Portland the other day, who claims to be focusing on solar, and you look out over the roofs, there's no solar on majority of the roofs that have an opportunity. So that's something. And I don't know, I know we're looking at short-term rentals right now, and I think you guys are doing that. Are you guys doing it?
We're in the middle of doing the outreach on that, so we're still out doing community engagement. I think they had a meeting last night, so we're ongoing. We're coming back to you in policy session.
Yeah, I talked to Gary. We hadn't had a recommendation, but I haven't gone to any of those meetings because I've been busy every night. But the biggest comment I heard is enforcement. And there's no other department that does enforcement.
Oh, maybe.
Maybe.
We're
But
working on that.
it's something we have to make sure that we do, is that we really enforce this. I have a place that we're considering a short-term rental at the coast, and believe me, they really enforce, because people don't want us to do this, but at the same time, we have to do this. So there's a revenue opportunity. Another thing is marketing the services we have. So fleet management might be an opportunity or fleet maintenance opportunity that the county could provide. I know the city of Milwaukee used to do the fire district. I think they do their own now. But what do we have in your department that we can market? Now, I know we do planning for various cities. We do a lot of stuff. But what could we market to the county for other folks? Full cost recovery, I'm totally in support of that. I think that when builders come, or when the Home Builders Association talk to us, they say, we want it done fast and efficiently, and we're willing to pay for it. That's true. But at the same time, we have to look at the affordability of low-income housing or EDUs. I think it's EDUs, right? ADUs. I always get that wrong. It's kind of like Ken's name.
Dwelling unit.
It's all right, I'm used to it.
We need to figure out a way to reduce the cost of building one of those and still not impact our budget. And the contracting, again, lack of bidders, the timing. There are times when it's good to have cash to focus on future projects, and also matching. So I think that's all I have. And you mentioned already, since I was going to ask, are you evaluating your employees annually? And you have a lot of employees, and you obviously can't be doing it.
No, the good
Your
people,
team,
we have good people that
your
are doing it.
various departmental managers and stuff like that. We really need to do that. And I don't think over the years it's been emphasized enough.
It is in our performance measures.
Yep. And anyway, you guys do a great job, and I'm thrilled about the vehicle registration fee, which opens up a ton of partnership opportunities and a lot of opportunities to reduce our backlog. It's not enough; it'll never be enough, but thanks for your work, and I want to thank Ken in particular because he went to many community meetings and presented the VRF discussion. I had an opportunity to share some of that with him. People always understood the need. I never heard anyone say there wasn't a need, but there were people who just plain wanted it to be a vote, and everyone understood the need, and I think Ken really did a good job of presenting that, and also the cities for their support and effort. Even though I don't think it was as great as it could be, at least they did participate, and I look forward to that also at the C4 discussion retreat in June, right?
Yeah.
Where we can really start talking about it. I also maybe affordable housing, I think that we ought to take some time at the C4 to talk about. Now I'm trying to remember what I was just going to say. You know, we're doing a housing needs assessment, and gosh, now I'm trying to remember what the heck.
Which originated out of C4, if
Yeah.
I remember correctly.
Anyway, if it comes back while these guys are talking, I'll ask it.
Okay, I'll
Since we
watch
are
for your
streaming
card.
live, can I just say one thing?
We won't be talking about bylaws, will we?
Oh, God.
No, I want to talk about one thing, and that's just a statement that you made. It is a delicate balance between the two issues that you bring up around bidding for some of our projects. And I will tell you, and the citizens of Clackamas County, we have intentionally not awarded some projects because of cost. We have had projects that have come in with one bidder. They blew our budget out. It was a discussion around the time, and we made the conscious decision to spend that public money wisely. It's also a dialogue around the changing market. How do you bid them more proactively? What's the sweet spot for our bidding environment? We know for a fact it's not around $500,000. The sweet spot is around, $1 to $2 million. And how do you get there? You package those projects together. You put a package of projects out to the marketplace. That is how we get bidders. That is how we get folks that come in at a more reasonable cost, more aligned with our engineering estimates. And that's just kind of a nuance of some of that discussion. But since you said the statement you did, I want to make sure the public knew that we have intentionally held back dollars.
Yeah, but in those 10 years, we've had both extremes of the cycles economically and on the bidding environment, and we didn't seize them at the right time.
Yep.
And the only thing I say is what I hear is really you guys have a capacity issue internally that you have not been able to ramp up, even to the new dollars we even have, is really what I'm hearing.
And as we told,
That's part of it.
As we discussed last year, that was a 1 to 2, 3 year kind of ramp up with those FTEs and the dialogue about how you get the product out in the street.
We don't know how to speak. We don't have the capacity to even spend it, is what you're saying.
Good, thank you.
We have a path forward.
Mr. Feely?
Good morning. Good morning.
Brief question. One is for Mike on the asset management system. And, I thought I did that. I may have asked you this year, but is that a transportation-specific system you're going out for, or could it be shared by others?
So to be clear, all we've done is a strategic plan.
Okay.
We have not yet begun the process of looking at software. When we do, I wouldn't say it would be necessarily intentionally exclusive, and we've had conversations about this in the past, but the linear assets that a transportation group has are a little different than the vertical assets
Right.
that facilities might have, and sometimes the packages aren't well suited for each other, but certainly it wouldn't
But
be.
you're going to look at that
As part of the
possibility.
process, we'll consider it.
Okay, that's good. Now, I understand you're really excited about Fleet. Actually, I managed it at City Park. I loved it because we made so many good changes. It was kind of exciting.
Yeah.
So I know that you've taken a look, and maybe not you, but maybe prior, but what efficiencies have been identified and made in the consolidation of Fleet and the
There's
study?
a long list.
Well, yeah, I mean, top 3 to 5.
Well, so let's be honest. We are actually, we made a we made a conscious decision to be a willing partner in the discussion around fleet. And the dialogue is that historically, those fleet services were split up between heavy and light. And what we've inherited, we've always had the heavy fleet component. We inherited those partners out there that are doing the light fleet work. Some efficiencies that we're working on. They had separate parts rooms in the same location. Why am I doing that? That's a billable discussion. We're having dialogue around staffing. So I have a staff of X and a staff of Y. They both have different certifications, but there's commonality in some of the work they do. So how do I provide, how do I spread that service across a broader band of our customers? Last but not least, there's efficiencies in the operational times. We run shifts on heavy fleet that light fleet historically has not run. So how do I provide more services to our customers? Our great customer we have is CCSO, the Sheriff's Office, pardon me, Clackamas County Sheriff's Office.
Yeah,
We can expand their service because now they can utilize some of our heavy fleet folks that are there to do the service they need. So, you want to expand on that?
I was going to say, it also offers career paths for the mechanics. They're not separate. Literally, they're in separate shops right now. With the relocation, it'll be one shop, one operation. But I think Dan hit the most is it's taken two operations and just combining them into one.
And have you modernized like parts? Is it automated now, like automatic ordering? Or
We're 4 months into this, not quite yet.
Yeah, I would say no,
Using it, though?
but we are set up with barcoding, right? So
Oh,
we
okay,
have,
well,
yeah,
that's a
we have
start.
been making progress.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And then switch gears completely. Code compliance. When a citizen makes a complaint, let's say they do it online, just for example, what can they expect
Sure, as in response or kind
in
of?
terms of response and
Sure.
updating on the process?
The way the process should work is when the complaint is filed, you should get an email back. We had some issues for a while with our email. We didn't know it was down. So that's been fixed, to my knowledge. But you should get an email back saying that we've received it and we're going to take action on it. Once we get that, we give it to a staff person. They will initiate contact, find out a little bit more about the code complaint, talk with the person who's bringing it forward. It depends on what it is and how many complaints there are and if it's confidential or non-confidential. And that's a board policy that we follow. If it's something that moves forward, then we do start that process. We engage with the person who's being said that we have a violation on. That's that 10-day waiting period. We give them 10 days.
Okay, I remember you saying that.
Yeah, so that we go out and we say, hey, this has been brought to our attention, which, we'd like to start a dialogue. For some people, they truly don't know that they're out of compliance. And then they come back and they say, I didn't know that I couldn't build this without a permit. I want to work with you. That's a different conversation than somebody who spends the 10 days and doesn't reach out to us. And then that 7 days when we go out and field staff, because it's not an active permit where we have an invitation to be on the property, we have to schedule time to go out and do the observation. Obviously, some people aren't very excited about that. So that is that time frame of trying to validate the violation, make sure we can see it, and get the experts out there. If it's a building codes, let's say it's electrical, we have to get an electrical inspector on property as well.
I want to expand on that just briefly. One of the challenges that we're working through with Michelle Amend, I'm not sure you've had the pleasure to meet her yet. She's the new supervisor for code enforcement, and she's phenomenal. In case you're listening, Michelle.
Which she is.
But the dialogue has been around. So, for example, like caseloads. Caseload comparison with other jurisdictions. Why are our caseload numbers for our folks so high compared to other areas? And let's talk about how we improve that process to not only get quicker resolution, but also is there ability to go back and work with our other partners in development services to have them take more of a role? Meaning, planning we get a violation about a planning issue. Why can't our planning folks go out and do the first site check to see, hey, you know what, you confirm it for us. And if it is, send the first letter. Informing the citizen of the various issue that's out there. Taking a softer hand to that before we go into the code compliance spectrum. So there's all these creative ideas and thoughts that she has in mind to deal with that.
Yeah, we're doing that with building codes as well. As if we see something, instead of just having it turned over into compliance, we're going out and we're working with the customer education. Say, hey, you need a permit for this. We have stop work orders. We have other ways instead of turning it over to compliance to help lower the volume of cases coming forward.
Okay, thank you. And then just a little PSA as a member of the Clackamas Dogs Foundation, the importance of spaying and neutering your pets to reduce the unwanted dog population in Clackamas County. Make it a little easier on Mike and dog service.
Very good. Commissioner Schrader?
So I'm going to start out with your favorite first, which is the fleet issue. Is some of the legislation that's going on in Salem going to affect how you manage your fleet in terms of emissions? In other words, what kind of fleet do we have? What changes are we going to have to see, assuming, well, it appears as if it'll move forward, and any idea of what the larger cost might be with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
You're talking about the diesel bill?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, we've analyzed at least our transportation maintenance fleet, which for us is the bulk of the heavy equipment, which is what would be part of it. So the bill, it's got a lot of amendments. I'd have to look and see what the latest one might be. But as of right now, most of we're in okay shape.
Okay.
It would affect vehicles pretty much older than 2010. And so, but we wouldn't have to get rid of them until probably around 2029. At least that's the latest version. So basically, through the normal replacement process, the bulk of them would have been replaced anyway. The biggest loss to us is we might not be able to salvage some of the older ones. So, we do asset management with our fleet. So we use them until we can maximize that value, and then we sell them and take the money and invest it in something new. The different versions of the bill have said you can't replace it. Some say now you just can't re-register it, which means you could potentially sell it to someone in Idaho. It's hard to say, but the salvage value we think we'll lose over that 10-year period will be about $750,000.
Okay.
So it's spread out over time. So like I said, we can survive. I don't think the impact will be deep because luckily we have a pretty good fleet.
And that's an interesting question as well, because the dialogue, especially when you meet with the community, they talk about, our vehicles and what we have, especially heavy fleet. When you think about, forget the word fleet, think about an asset. So there is a prime point in a discussion of where that asset has reached its point of no return in regards to any kind of cost residual on that. And so that's where we're trying to be more effective and efficient is what's that price point or what's that use point where we can put it back out on the market and have it resold. So that's why we've been pretty proactive in our equipment purchases. It isn't easy work that we put that equipment through. So we've got a variety of heavy fleet and equipment that are more than just the light trucks that you see. We do think there will be a discussion probably that comes out of our discussion with the climate action plan that may have an impact on other fleet elements, light fleet, acquisitions, what are we acquiring? Also, some sort of methodology or reasoning if you want to acquire something outside of a certain scope of it. Is it electric? Is it not? Is it 4-cylinder? We've talked with others about that versus 8-cylinder. Is it 4-door? I mean, there's got to be some sort of operational need on why you need this vehicle. That's probably going to be higher than our standard, but that discussion is maturing.
Okay, thank you with that. I did have a question about dog control as well. And that is that we are largely a facility that is a no-kill facility, has been on my understanding I imagine it does have to happen occasionally, but it's not the norm.
So we have
that's kind of what-
we have a save rate. Our MFR goal is 85%, and so
Okay.
of any dog that enters our facility, our goal is that we're able to save 85%. As you know, as a municipal shelter that has to take every dog, and we do take owner surrenders as well.
Yeah.
We can only do so much depending on the dog that comes to us, but we do everything we can to work with rescues. We have a new foster program that's starting to get up off the ground, and we're doing everything we can within our resources to have the highest save rate we can.
Our resources and the work that we do with the foundation.
Okay.
The foundation that supports that effort as well.
And that's what I actually thought. I wanted to just make sure the public knew that since I've adopted dogs, obviously, from our shelter. A
So have
couple
I.
of rescues. Yeah, no.
Mark, I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So my next piece is the sustainability piece. I know that Jim mentioned solar. one of the things I would like to ask them to look at is a coalition with our extension folks, our parks folks. That's Clackamas County. Our parks are big ones as well as NCPRD. And then the other group was, obviously extension, because we have no policies in place, as far as I know, that deal with pollination issues. And we do own land, we do manage land, we manage, and this is also a facilities kind of a cross-jurisdictional piece, that some of the recent research on pollination tells us that one of the reasons you're seeing collapse of pollinators and pollination is because we're not getting actually the right amount of flowers and plants that produce pollen throughout the year. There's a whole big piece of it that happens in the spring, but one of the reasons you're seeing these kind of hive collapses is because there's actually no food. You have a number of people, including our extension folks, our farmers markets, who are kind of educating and doing pollination issues. And I don't think it would cost anything. I'm very conscious of cost, to take a look at what those kinds of plants are, not only for our park system, but for our facilities here. We can all actually build upon what our master gardeners are also doing in that arena. I've been in contact with the OSU Entomology Museum and their researchers dealing with this particular issue. We can could actually even move into volunteer connection kinds of opportunities. We can have policies where we put bee boxes for osmium, well, bees, that's their genus name. So anyway, these little megachilid bees that are stingless, so you can reduce liability. You don't want to put out honeybee hives because people are allergic. But I'm wondering if that could be part of it. It seems that it would be positive. It would actually make our parks even more beautiful. We can have these potentials for an oasis, but it would kind of take a cross-jurisdictional, cross-agency kind of look at it. So I was kind of hopeful that might be something we can talk about. There's so much going on already. It really is little to no cost. It's mostly just connecting with who's already out there doing something and becoming like a bee campus, or again, policies for when we develop new parks. Whether it be county parks or NCPRD, that we include some of those pieces in development, like bee houses and the kinds of plants that we have. And research is all there, information is out there. So I was kind of hopeful we might. I wasn't, I couldn't say I practice anymore, but now that people are finally realizing this is an important thing, it'd be nice to implement those policies under our sustainability initiative with our other agencies. Dan, you look confused.
Not confused.
No, but you're like, oh.
Well, I think we've got to, we are willing participants in that dialogue and that discussion. I think that we've got to have a broad-based discussion around where that gets implemented and where that lands.
I know that, and that's why
like a policy session or issue session around that, or some dialogue with you about what the intent is, because operationally, those operational components that can really implement something along those lines are probably going to be county parks, Clackamas Parks and Rec District, ag extension.
Yep.
Those are those folks that have land, that's their mission. They
the
kinda do that
Clackamas
service.
County Soil, Water, and Conservation District.
There's partners out there.
So it's really a matter of making those connections as part of the conversation as we move forward with sustainability, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel and it doesn't cost you any money. That's kind of what my goal is with this. So I'd be glad to help with that. Okay.
We can talk about it.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We have Ms. Coldwell and then Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
I have a question about, you mentioned new funding in vehicle registrations that's not yet anticipated in this budget. Did I hear you correctly?
You did.
Do you know how much that's likely to be?
Yeah, in the presentation we talked about, let's see here, where am I at? It was, the total's about 11 million, 11.6.
That's annually, but we wouldn't start till January.
Correct.
Right, but it's money
It's right there. So
it's
$11
money
million.
that can be anticipated I would recommend that we add that on an amendment to this budget rather than waiting. In the interest of transparency for budgeting, the budget is an estimate. And if it can be anticipated at the time, then we should be including it in the budget.
Let's see what comments Krista and
Yeah.
or Haley have to make.
Thank you.
Krista.
So we're well aware, but there are some complexities around the budgeting and the associated accounting for this particular fee revenue because we are collecting on also behalf, we're getting money coming in for cities and there's a distribution aspect. And so we were not prepared to dive into the particulars of this yet at this budget time without doing the adequate research to set up the appropriate fund accounting that's associated with it. Although the revenue is anticipated, we wanted to have a little bit more time to dive into that, make sure we set up the proper structures, consult with our audit firm as well on setting up this structure of accounting, and then bring it back forth in a supplemental budget.
What I can also add, though, as you see from the programs, look at transportation and the programs that are below on the screen in front of you. Our intent is to establish a unique and specific program for those dollars, similar to the Damascus money. So there's open transparency around where those dollars are at.
So when you're talking about a supplemental budget, you're not talking about a budget modification. You're talking about a full-blown supplemental process. Because I'm hearing you talk about accounting, but to me, that's a different world than budgeting world, where we should be anticipating revenues we can anticipate.
The accounting, however, is going to drive the structure that I need to set up for the budget. However, so the two are related, unfortunately, and so
That's my recommendation, so it's up to the
I would
budget
agree.
committee.
I mean, that seems like a big chunk of money that you know about not to include in the budget. I mean, even at a gross level, you can always move it around later on.
So we have Commissioner Fisher, then Ms. Lee.
I was just gonna make a comment
Well,
on
let's
this
talk about
discussion.
that.
This first.
Let's talk about that for a second. Hi, Krista, how you doing?
Maybe we should, may I suggest that we put that on the parking lot so that if we have,
And maybe that's the best way to come back and discuss it if there'll be time, because,
Right,
you
and
know,
I'm gonna
we were
mention
talking
that
about
too.
it
I think we have
yesterday when the
less than that,
discussion
maybe
got brought up
minutes.
about whether it's in the budget. And we have done similar budgeting exercises. So for example, in budgets, you may see a bond debt, and with the bond debt, an expense, a revenue coming in and an expense, but we haven't gone out and got the bond yet. So you've seen it. We were trying to get a little bit more specificity on programmatically, how would you implement it to keep our overhead costs as low as possible to do that? So that the numbers we could put in the budget would be placeholders, with the nuance that with the disclaimer about some of the accuracy of those. Because they would probably be over, not under, to allow us the authorization. I don't know, you want to build on that? Or just
just
talk about it later?
FYI, I just want to point out that we have about 7 minutes left for discussion under this topic. And if need be, we can make sure that we get something on the parking lot so we can come back to other discussions. Thank you.
Well, I don't think it should be dropped, so we need to write it.
No, we need to
get
write
written
it,
up there.
right, it needs to, yeah. Yeah.
Or
definitely.
VRF.
VRF.
Yeah,
I don't know. What's
One of those
VFR? Maybe we
things.
want that.
Yeah.
good point. Okay, Commissioner Fisher, and then Ms. Lee, and then Commissioner Savas.
Thank you. I have so enjoyed working with Eben on the Sustainability Climate Action Plan. Commissioner Humberston and I have had the privilege of being the commission liaisons with that effort. And so I'm happy to see that that whole sustainability, solid waste, it's right here in the budget, and it has FTE dedicated to that effort. And so I just would like, this is one of those lenses, it's one of those priorities that we have. It may not have made it on our priority list, but the commission did say we want a climate action plan that is just beyond our very large enterprise of over 2,000 employees in Clackamas County. And just a comment on the implementation of how we are moving forward with developing that climate action plan. It gets right to what Commissioner Schrader was saying about the importance of pollination. It gets right to what Chair Bernard was saying regarding solar, all of those activities in creating that lens, and would just love to hear some comments about that. priority.
No, just so I understand the question, the question is.
Yeah, it's not so much a question as just an opportunity to share. We started off the budget process with listing what our priorities are, and this, developing a climate action plan, it keeps coming up throughout all of our deliberations, and we just love, and I'm happy to see that it is included in the budget, but
So, it's interesting work for us because, the dialogue around, sustainability, it depends on where, politically this pendulum swings. They actually lost their name for a while, and then all of a sudden we brought their name back. And that dialogue we've also put that work and prioritized that work, and this takes that work to that next level. And it takes it to that next level because it takes them from being kind of a work group or a program that was pretty buried in some of our operations, and it was DTD focused as a whole. And what this exercise has really done is really broadened it out across the totality of Clackamas County and beyond. And Eben has taken a proactive approach with Cheryl's guidance about the dialogue around we need partners in that discussion. And you see the discussion that you have about that development of that multidisciplinary components that are coming together to talk about it, because the discussion on that topic transcends to water and environment services, transcends to parks, it transcends to every department within Clackamas County. And to make it actionable items, they need to be partners in the development of that plan, which is wonderful. And the question is, where does it go next, and how do we deliver on that? And but we have seen commitment from those divisions, which is great. They have come to the table. They have been willing partners in the dialogue, and it's up to us collectively to see where we can make a dent in that discussion and what actions we can take or change to really make measurable gains in that area of interest. And you're right, it's probably a discussion around where does it go next? Because there's our actions, which are the first step, but the next is, okay, how do we ingrain some of this dialogue into the day-to-day operations that we have, working with our community, working through business and economic development, working through housing and affordability, working through fleet and others. And that's the way it kind of grows naturally and exponentially.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you. It's been wonderful for Commissioner Humberston and I to be part of it. And unfortunately, we haven't really had the time to share with our full commission. So I really appreciate you explaining where we are in the process. Because it's exciting when you talk about all this cross-discipline and cross-departmental, cross-pollination, quoting Commissioner Schrader.
Pollination thing was new. That guy, I wrote that.
Arthur should have been
All of
listening
it,
to that last
all
one.
of it. And it is important. We all have to do our part, so. Yes.
Ms. Lee?
Yes, I had a similar question to Sean's about including the VRF now or later in the supplemental. So since that's put on the parking lot, I'll take the opportunity to thank all the commissioners as well as your staff in getting that put in place. For a little city like Sandy, where I'm on the city council, that piece of money is really a big thing because it will allow us to develop a project, Bell Street project, that will open up industrial land and provide further economic benefits for the city. So I look forward to talking more about that at C4. And as a rural entity that has no ability to get money from Metro, we really appreciate what we can get from the county's projects. So thank you
I want to
again.
record that. Can you say that again?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
No,
Appreciate
thank you,
that.
Ms. Lee. Commissioner Savas and then Commissioner Humberson, and I would ask that we be mindful of the time. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to, actually, I didn't realize that Commissioner Fisher was going to broach this, but I did want to really talk about, fleet. We've been working hard on the legislative thing. Mike, others talking about the 2017 Volkswagen diesel legislation and how that might be implemented. And it gets into the fleet discussion as far as updating our vehicles. And also really kind of, maybe not for today, obviously there's not time, but want to get to the aspect of utilization of the equipment, the fleet that you have, that you use, whether it's road paving or it's whatever, brush cutting, all that stuff, and kind of get a sense of where that utilization is being optimized and maybe it's where it's being underutilized. I think that's a value. I think we have some vehicles that are roll off simply because of the legislation, but I just want to make sure they're right sizing the fleet to the dollars we have. We're talking about capacity to getting the dollars out and spent and on how it's being done, that everything's being right-sized in a systematic form and also being done in a way that's environmentally sound.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been doing that for years. I mean, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but we've been managing that heavy fleet responsibly for years. We're now applying that lens to the light fleet as well, and like we noticed that the motor pool vehicles, the usage maybe wasn't very good for some vehicles. We think we have quite a few more than we need, so we're going to actively look to sell them off. And so, but we've been doing that with heavy for a while. But,
And you missed that four-cylinder comment because that was for you, because that was the discussion we have around right-sizing a vehicle. And so operationally, is there a need? What is the need? Why does it need to be this type of vehicle? And we set a standard associated with that.
Yeah, and it pains me to see a lot of fleets, including metros, driving around in SUVs,
Yeah.
frankly, with one person in them.
And
Yeah.
I will tell our heavy folks, in fact, I've talked to Randy about this, they have a reason to get large vehicles. They carry crews, they transport material, they do all that.
Equipment.
That's a different discussion around other uses, and it's a good dialogue to have.
Thank you, gentlemen. Commissioner Humberston, and this will be our last comment on this.
Yes, my suggestion on the VRF comment that Ms. Colwell offered is to go to page 7 under DTD Administration and asterisk in simply the following: VRF $11 million accounting program to be developed this fiscal year. That is transparent. It acknowledges that we anticipate that revenue. It commits you to actually doing what you said you were going to do anyway, and it's open and available to the public. So that's my suggestion on how we can address transparently that VRF.
So don't lose track of that thought.
I don't think you want to do the 11 million though, because that's
That-
actually not the county share.
Well, it'll
Right.
hit our books.
Yeah.
But you will
Or whatever the
receive it
number,
and
whatever the number
distribute
is.
it.
I'm not
Right.
a quibble about it.
You're hitting on all the specificity
Well, I don't know
around
that
the
you even
concern.
want a number. You may just want, I mean, but
Fine.
let's definitely have that topic discussed before we do an adoption of this budget. There's enough concern and interest in adding that in some way or another so that we know that that's something that's going to happen in the future, in this year's future. So, that. Thank you so much. Thank you for kind of sitting in the hot seat there for, a little more than, an hour and 45, so.
I want to thank you for all the questions. We've had years, we've only got one
It's
before.
It's
It
great,
shows an
isn't
interest in
it?
the budget and the work that
Makes
we're
you
doing,
wonder
which
when
is
you don't
great.
get
Well,
any
it shows
questions.
that people are really interested in what's going on and that they want to be good stewards as well as you are good stewards
New
of our
leadership.
finances. And new leadership. It's all different. Thank you so much.
Wilda?
We-
Can
So-
I also make a plea for thanks real quick?
Go ahead.
Can you change to your reduction slide real quick?
I didn't hit on it. Are you going to hit on it? I wasn't going to go there. Well, I have one too, the $500,000. No.
Right.
Oh.
So there's two comments I want to make
Uh,
related to the reductions real quick, if we can get there.
Come on.
There.
Nope.
One more.
This one.
So what isn't shown here is that this is one of the only departments that after we did the maintenance calculations, which included those 2% reductions, I appreciate that you noted that you got more than last year, but not as much as you would have gotten in the original calculation. In addition to that, Deidre went through, or their team in general, went through the whole thing and made corrections where they had gotten one-time money in the past and different things, and actually corrected their maintenance level down by over $200,000. I want to say it was close to 280. If Deidre has the exact number, she can say it. But I really appreciated that coming in new. They worked, they were honest, they were transparent. They gave back money that they could have kept if they didn't correct what I had done. And I would also note that in last year's budget, you guys had gotten the PLPs from the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And so within that, back in year 4 or something, they got $500,000 for the paving. And last year, when House Bill 2017 came in, they actually gave that back. And that's what you reallocated to the police jail beds. So I
Ah.
did want to give them credit and thanks for working with us during this budget.
Very good. Thank you guys for doing that. Thank you for pointing that out. Appreciate that, Ms. Fish.
Thank you.
All right,
Great.
we are going to recess for 15 minutes, and when we come back at 10:30, we're going to hear from the treasurer's office. We're in recess.